Let's go beyond the connection. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm Steve McDonald, your host, and we have a super interesting guest from every aspect. We have Crist on, and Chris, you are the Chief Information Officer at the world's largest airport, the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in Atlanta. And boy, if there's a story about why you want a really resilient network infrastructure, I think you live it every day, and so we're gonna dig deep into that in a big way, in especially in what shouldn't be surprising to people in these days. But we're gonna talk about wireless first infrastructure, and not only why that's important for resiliency, but why it's a business driver. And you're going to give us, I think, some background. I had perceptions that all airports were, a lot of the funding came from the local city or state or federal governments and everything. But you squared that away with me that no, you're a business. And so everything that you do has to drive revenue for that business to accomplish all of your goals. So I just want to make that clear. But here's what I'd love to do. You have a phenomenal story from your childhood to where you've achieved the status of where you are today. I'd love to hear a lot more about your background before we dive in.
I appreciate that. Well, first and foremost, I want to say I always get excited for the opportunity to talk about this amazing organization and the things that we're doing. It's the busiest airport in the world. And just every day is, it's not boring. It's not boring coming into this organization. And again, so I look forward to talking about the details as to why it's not boring. But yeah, I do appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about my background. Part of the reason why that's important to me is because I really hope that if I can share this information, that some individuals out there that may find themselves in similar circumstances will know, hey, we can accomplish these things. We can go to college. We can get a great professional career, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be my role, but just get into a professional career and just be happy with a meaningful job. So I appreciate that opportunity. And it's generally speaking, for me, I'm just incredibly grateful to be where I'm at. I grew up with my Hispanic family, so I'm mixed myself. And so my family is from Mexico. And I have immense respect for my grandmother because she came to this country and she didn't go to kindergarten. She had no formal schooling at all. And so she never learned how to read or write or drive a vehicle. And so she took the bus to make it happen. She figured it out and she raised 6 kids. So my uncles, aunts, my mother. But she had hoped for the best for them, but they didn't get through high school themselves. A lot of them didn't even make it to high school. And for me, growing up with my Hispanic family, I didn't know my father till I was 20. That's just where I thought I was going to be. Maybe not getting from high school and just trying to find a job that can help to just allow me to make ends meet. But I never considered myself smart enough to go to college. I never considered myself good enough to wear a suit even. I know that sounds silly, but suits were for the big leagues, people that far beyond my reach growing up. And so when I joined the military out of high school, I joined the Air Force as a combat medic. It really opened my eyes to a whole nother world. You had individuals my age, 17, 18, 19, into their 20s that were in the military, going to college on the side, getting great experience, and they were making it happen. And I thought maybe I can too. And so things just really took off from there. And I'm very thankful for that experience and exposure. So again, I could talk about all my experience from there, but I just wanted to bring that up for folks that sometimes it just takes exposure to the right environment and it gets you going.
That's such a inspirational story. Here's what I want to do now. I want to get into where you achieve what you've come. Now the role is Chief Information Officer at the airport. And maybe start out, you talked about there's certainly some major challenges. Tell us a little bit about the story of what it takes to run the airport. And we'll start there.
So as the busiest airport in the world in 2024, we had 108 million passengers go through this facility. Roughly 300,000 passengers go through this facility every single day. We have 63,000 employees that work at this organization. It is a city. And when you think about 300,000 people going through one location in one day, again, how big of a city is that? It is an immense operation. And so, of course, the infrastructure that's required to keep things going, from the train system to all the mechanical parts that make it move, the baggage handling system, and of course, the technology that makes it all run. We have, likely over 100,000 items that are connected to our infrastructure in some way or another. And so we got to keep it running 24/7. This is an operation that never stops. And so, yeah, we have an immense opportunity to ensure that the passenger experience is safe and efficient. And through technology, we're excited about where it's going, even more efficient than what it is today.
So we talked a lot on our previous call about, yeah, the customer experience and what you're doing there. If you could relate that, because there's a lot of us in the industry that feel more like a support department to the companies that we are there and provide support to, not necessarily having a seat at the table, not necessarily feeling like we are a driver of this business. And I know you told a story about how you don't take a job unless you feel that the CIO position is a seat at the table and you have direct involvement in the strategic direction and therefore the long-term sustainable growth of the business. Tell us a little bit about that and then tell us about how you feel connected to the business and driving the business.
Thank you for that. I'm unsure if this conversation has had enough. Maybe it is. It's not something that I hear enough, but I think it is a great value of mine to be aligned with the CEO of the organization. And that is actually a part of my vetting process these days. I've been fortunate to have experience with CIO of a few different organizations, different industries. And after all that experience, I would say that there's a difference between organizations that choose to have their technology department a couple layers down from the CEO and those that have that IT department either directly reporting to the CEO or very closely. And in my opinion, it's an organization that views technology as more of a strategic partner versus one that views it as, all right, it's a tactical initiative. And so that's how I view that. But it is very important to me. And I will say at our organization, we have an incredible leader and we report to that leader. Technology does. I report to that leader of our organization. And so we're in good hands and we have a seat at the table. And I'm very thankful we have a new CEO. His name is Ricky Smith. And we just had a conversation yesterday about the importance of technology and how technology is going to transform the passenger experience. He wants to have a hand in it. He doesn't want to have it filtered through multiple. He wants to have more to hear firsthand from me because he knows how important it is. Of course, I could talk about all the details of why that matters and how we got to where we are, but generally speaking, that's where my thought process goes with that.
Give me an example, like, of when you talk about how technology is gonna transform the passenger experience. That's all the way from the moment they get to the airport to successfully onboarding and getting on their way. There's nothing more important that the business of the airport does. And so, what's an example? What's one of the things that you think about every single day when you think about that passenger experience and how you're helping to support that?
I'll get to the ideal state and where we're going. Eventually, and I know this may sound crazy to some people out there, but eventually, our passengers will never have to stop for anything. As soon as they come into the airport, they go directly to their gate or their plane. And the way, and securely and safely, by the way. And so, of course, some people may recall that experience from before 2001. And so we can get back there. And a big part of the reason why is through what we call computer vision, but essentially it's using artificial intelligence to recognize objects in space via cameras. So I'll give you a very basic example of how we're starting with that process. Delta, fantastic organization. Delta is headquartered here at Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta International Airport. And a partnership between us, the airport, and Delta, we were able to pioneer in doing what's called biometric air exit. So whenever you go to travel internationally, instead of having to pull out a boarding pass or any information at all, you're simply scanned, your face recognition, and then you board. For an organization that sees 300,000 passengers per day, seconds make a big difference. And so we saw immense efficiency in that. And so we're getting ready this year to make it to where all of our international gates have that capability. So, and that's just the beginning. Eventually, we're going to continue to expand upon that capability so that you never have to stop anywhere. So that's the goal.
That sounds like the technology is actually the bedrock of the growth and the strategic plan of the company, the business. I want to go back to something you said early on when you were articulating the story about the airport. And you said that there was over 100,000 different devices that were connected. And then there's 60,000 plus employees that are connecting through those devices. But there's sensors. We talked a lot about the Internet of Things. Like, in one respect, somebody could naively think you're in one location, you're in a major metropolitan market. You could have hardwire connections to everything and anything that you want. Why would you have to go wireless? And that's the foundation of our discussion today, this wireless first infrastructure that drives business. Explain why you are on a wireless first strategy.
I want to channel Miss Jan Lennon. She was our interim general manager for a while. I say general manager, that's the actual title that's used, but essentially CEO. So Jan, she would continue to say that we're landlocked. We cannot expand anymore physically. We can only build so much. So we don't have the same luxury as, for example, Denver Airport. They actually have the most land. And so they have opportunity to expand in many ways. We simply don't. So we have to get more efficient with what we have. And so it's through technology that we're going to make that work. And so then to connect to your point of hardwire and all that, we reached the point of physical capacity for our data center. We literally could not run any more physical cabling into the data center. I've never heard that ever happen. And so we had to physically construct and expand the data center on both sides to make it to where we could fit more capacity into it. We know we can't continue to operate that way. So we have to rely on more wireless capability. And so that's what we're doing. We're investing a significant amount into our distributed antenna system, for example, which helps with our cellular wireless capability for our passengers. So in case you're ever flying through Atlanta, by 2026, so next year, you will have the state-of-the-art, brand new distributed antenna system so that your reception is amazing no matter where you're at in the airport. So, of course, as you can imagine, it's more than just cell phones that will connect through cellular capability, not just passenger phones, but plenty of devices. Then, of course, on the Wi-Fi side of the house with the Ethernet, we're definitely investing quite a bit in improving our wireless access point capability, as well as the infrastructure that's required to make this all tick. So I'll stop there. I know that was a lot, but it's a lot going on.
So, the idea, though, if you could talk about the Internet of Things and the impact that has on why you can't have a hardwired infrastructure as your future structure, as your technology, why that's not even an option these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll give you a few examples, maybe just two. One example is we were looking for this capability that would allow us to be able to detect airborne pathogens in our ventilation systems, or if it's just simply in the air within our buildings. But in order to do that, we'd have to install more IoT capability. And more specifically, we'd have to install sensors within our HVAC system. Those require connection to our Wi-Fi capability. So we're talking more IP addresses, we're talking much more. And that could potentially be hundreds and hundreds of devices just for that project if we were to do it across our organization. That's just one initiative. Another would be we eventually want to get to the point to where we're doing predictive maintenance on things like elevators, escalators, people movers, things like that. But we need sensors to be able to give us live data on what's going on with that elevator, whatever it may be. So again, more things that require connect wirelessly. So we're looking at expanding our wireless capability or wireless requirements, gosh, by thousands. Just in the next 2 years, it's going to be an increase by thousands. So we got to be ready for that. It's not practical to have a physical wire connected to every single one of these things. It's not practical.
And you told a story about how recently in one of the terminals in a specific area, the wireless network went down. And then you thought, oh, this can affect some of the confectioneers and retail shops and things like that. But you actually had a response from a carrier that I'd love to have you talk about.
Yeah, I won't call out the carrier specifically. We have a lot of airlines here that we partner with, and we have a great relationship with all of them. But we didn't realize, and it's just the fact of the matter, we didn't realize how much they actually relied on our network infrastructure. Sometimes you don't fully know that until something goes wrong. And we had an incident just last week, actually, where there was some wireless access points, about 17 of them. There was an incident that happened and affected those 17. And we figured, okay, we're going to have issues with passenger connectivity, of course, and we're going to have issues with cameras that are maybe relying on whatever it may be that relies on that wireless infrastructure. But what we found is that some of our airlines, they were using our wireless infrastructure to check in passengers to board their flights. We actually didn't realize how reliant they were. We figured they were using it, but we didn't realize that they had pivoted towards using it almost primarily to do their business. So again, it's great. We think it's great. We certainly want for folks to be able to utilize the infrastructure that's there. But my gosh, it is a reminder of how much we're going in that direction, how more people are just saying, hey, you know what? Let's just connect to the wireless capability and run.
It's interesting because the very first thing when you and I spoke, and I asked you about the major challenges, the two most significant challenges that you face, and one of them was resiliency. Now, there's a large portion of the business community and the IT community that actually still looks at wireless as really important, but I can't go wireless first. I mean, wireless networks go up and down, the throughput, the capacity is varied. And so you're going all in. What is in resiliency is not something that you've given up on or you are compromising at all. So for those that are still thinking about the hardwired world and how that is the way that we need to stay tethered in connection to the hardwired world as much as we possibly can, what do you have to say to them in terms of the adoption of this wireless first strategy?
I think it's about adjusting the mindset as to where you stop the wire, because our wireless infrastructure, for example, it's certainly relying on hardware, but it relies on your switches and routers, core switches. And so you definitely need the hardware. And those are, of course, connected physically through wires. But from there, as you get your wireless access points in place, we can connect in certain areas up to 24,000 simultaneous connections wirelessly for our passengers alone. And we want that. We want that in place. And so then our employees, they certainly accomplish a lot of their work wirelessly. Some employees are going throughout the facilities on a tablet, connecting to wireless and doing work on that tablet while they're on the move. It's not practical to think you go offline mode while you're out and about. And then when you come back, you could connect it to the wire connectivity and get everything to upload or what have you. For them, that's just not going to cut it. They need live information, constant back and forth. So there are a lot of reasons why for an organization like ours, anyways, and in my opinion, many organizations out there, it will slow you down if you want to continue to rely on that only wire connection to your end users. And I do also want to state that we are investing a significant amount into the resiliency of that infrastructure that allows that wireless capability to work, to include redundant ways. We're even going to be building out a brand new data center so that we have full hot redundancy between our current data center and a brand new one that's geographically separate by a bit of a distance, not an extreme distance. But yeah, so a lot of reasons why the wireless infrastructure should be reliable.
What reminded me of another conversation I had when you were talking about the expectations. Two things. One, I just got a call a couple hours ago, chief marketing officer, and it said, I actually switched from one carrier to the next because their promise of in-flight wireless didn't deliver. And so he said, I have to be online when I am going transatlantic. It's not an option for me to not have 6 hours, 9 hours of downtime. So that live connection, absolutely. Another chief information officer said, so we're all living wireless first anyways. We all have our wireless devices. We're even connecting to our smart refrigerators now, and we're keeping track of where our kids are in their cars through their devices. And it's just so he said to think about it. I said we're all living it. It's not should we adopt it. We're here, and to your point is about how do we invest more? How do we lean in heavier on this? And I know that you're still operating in an environment where you don't have unlimited resources. And so where you make and you place your strategic bets is really important. What advice would you have to other CIOs that are out there in terms of where you're making the decisions to place your strategic bets to keep that passenger or just overall customer experience, guest experience, hospitality experiences that is the number one differentiator in business today. So when you're placing your bets and you're going wireless first, what is your advice for other CIOs that are listening into this today?
I will answer that in a way, and you let me know if I'm off in this. You can vector me in the right direction. I'm focused in a certain area for a reason. I think that we prepare for the future, as we know that the future could require more end point devices connected to our infrastructure. It's going to have more and more passengers that want to remain connected all the time. To your point, where that individual switch carriers because they're like halfway connected. It's going to be more and more of a demand of customers. So how do we ensure that they're going to be connected? It requires more infrastructure, more devices. More is what we're seeing. And it's my opinion that in order to be ready for that, you must invest in a resilient infrastructure. And I know that's a very general term, but I'll give you a very specific example that I imagine most CIOs would understand. In our organization, we are moving forward with a project that allows us to be more resilient because we think of it's not a matter of when, or it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So if a cyber attack, in 2024, there was a incident that happened to a major airport, ransomware attack, they were down. That can happen to any one of us. The question is, how do we immediately respond to that and get back on our feet? And those are the things that we're focused on. And so a specific example is in our concourses, we're already almost halfway through this project, but each one of the concourses has what we call an MDF, a main distribution frame. And then there are intermediate distribution frames that are throughout the concourse. You can think of these things as the brain or the nervous system for our IT infrastructure. If something happens to the MDF, the whole concourse is going to be affected. So our intention is to ensure that we have redundancy so that if something does happen to something critical within that MDF, we have another one that does the same thing that will just keep things going without a hitch, not even a stacking of downtime. And so that's how we're setting up our organization to be redundant across all of our concourses, to be redundant when it comes to our data center, even. And we're just going to keep on going, Steve. We're not going to stop there. We're going to keep like, what's next? What's next? So that we can keep going 24/7 and have an uptime that is acceptable to us. And even if we're an attack, or even if there's a power outage, or even if there's an issue, we can keep going. That's the intention. So my bet or my focus is on the foundation that all those exciting future things are going to rely on.
That it reminded me when you mentioned the hot connection. That's the failover. That's the redundancy. We won't skip a beat. We've got two high connections and we're constantly load balancing and looking and deciding what's going on and where we should be. AI should be helping us place our bets, right? On where the best connection is and where the most throughput is and all of that. So I have to ask you this question, which is I don't always know all the best questions to ask. I'm not in your seat every single day. What haven't I asked that would be important, you think, to have as a part of this conversation?
I, we could go a lot of different routes on this, but I will stay with our organization. And it is really exciting because you know that what I've learned since I've been here is that this airport, with as many people that come here from around the world, it can oftentimes be the first experience that someone has coming into the United States. And so many people will leave the United States to go to another country for the first time. Just the importance of that from an economic perspective has just really come to life for me. And so I think if there's something to talk about, it's how do we continue? So as we continue to see more and more people have these experiences, How do we continue to improve the experience while ensuring that they are safe and secure? I do want to provide an example of something that we're looking at right now to that I think will excite a lot of people. I think that they'll understand this. I know you can't talk about IT without talking about artificial intelligence, or I won't belabor too much, but we're looking right in partnership with our security professionals in our organization. We're looking at putting what's an AI overlay over our CCTV capabilities. So our cameras that are distributed throughout the organization, we have 4,000 cameras in place right now, and we're getting ready to up that to 7,000 cameras. So we might as well take advantage of the infrastructure that we have. So if we put an AI overlay, so we're getting ready to partner with this organization to do proof of concept, but it's really exciting because right now, for example, if someone comes to the facility and they do something wrong, okay, let's say that they leave a bag unattended, and so now we're concerned that it could be bad news. Someone will give a description. Okay, this individual was a male. They were wearing blue. They had a red hat on, and they were heading northwest or what have you. Today, they get that information over to our security professionals, but man, they got to sift through those thousands of cameras. Okay, where were they at? What concourse? What situation? And truth is, they could take them hours, days, weeks to really get into what actually happened. And, it depends on the circumstance, of course. With this AI overlay, it will immediately filter things down to, okay, person wearing blue, male, red hat, this location. It will immediately, within seconds, tell you exactly where they went. And that is exciting because it's going to improve the security and safety of our passengers in a dramatic way. I just wanted to point that out. It paints a picture of where we're going because you can imagine everything else that we can do with a capability like that. Sorry, Steve, I talked about that quite a bit. To me, it's really exciting, and I think it's going to transform the way we do aviation.
And I love the way that you're thinking because we as passengers already expect that you're doing everything that you can to keep us safe in that environment. But to be relentless in what can we do better? And there's always something we can do better. That is part of that customer experience, which is the bottom line, which you brought up at the beginning. I've got one last question for you. And this is maybe the hardest because we've talked about so much, but if our poor brains, we can't remember more than about two or three things at a time. So if you had the one most important thing that you wanted people to take away from this podcast, what would that be?
Wow, I have to choose one thing. If there are individuals out there that I want to stick with, in order to make something like this happen, in order to move forward with these changes, perhaps, Steve, hopefully it's not a new thing I'm introducing, but I just want for folks to understand out there that no matter what role you're in, if you're a leader or if you're an individual contributor, if you're hoping to come into an organization and make a change, you really want for the company, you want better for the customers, the passenger, in my case, the passenger experience. Maybe if you're in healthcare, you want better patient care, whatever it may be. If you really want to make that change, it's, in my opinion, to be successful, you have to first be your best to understand the business that you want to impact. So if I'm going to introduce hey, I have a new technology that I believe is going to improve the lives of our operations employees, let's just say, it's not a smart idea to just go to them and say, hey, we're going to do this. We're pushing this on you. Use it by this date. You want to first try to understand their current workflow. What it is that they currently do? What are they going through? What challenges do they have? And listen to them and learn how they do their work. Then you can say, I think I have a solution for you. What are your thoughts? What do you think about the solution? Do you think it could work? You get them involved with the whole thing from the get-go. Then you go together with that. It may sound simple to some, but it can be a challenge. But I do believe that if you're going to make meaningful impact in your organization, it's very important to try to understand the business that you're trying to impact. I hope that makes sense, Steve.
I mean, here's what I took away from that. In businesses in general, we have to understand our customers in order to better serve them. And you have passengers, but you have internal customers
Absolutely.
that you're serving. That is an equally as important audience because how they deliver the experience of being a passenger, and they're a very important part of that. If you don't understand them, how can you support them to ultimately impact the overall passenger experience? That's what I took away from what you said.
100%.
I have to tell you, I know one thing's going to happen for sure. People are going to have questions. Would it be appropriate if we gave out a link to your LinkedIn profile and gave people an opportunity to reach out and ask questions?
I would love that. That'd be fantastic.
Thank you, Chris. The mission of this podcast is to bring really important voices and perspectives and insights from the experiences we have in all different trades and industries and different levels within the organization. And if we share that, then, like the saying, that's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And I think you did that in a very significant way today. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I want to just mention, tying things back to the beginning, I am grateful for the conversation and for you to have the words that you have for me. I really appreciate that. If I was a 15-year-old looking into the future, I could see that I was having this conversation with you and getting the good word out. I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to what we got going on, to speak to a little bit about my personal story as well, and just for the opportunity to talk through some really exciting things. I really appreciate that.